Mr. Friedrichs, in your lecture you say that financial institutions are engaging massively in organized crime,
Right.
and that the consequences are perhaps more serious than from traditional organized crime. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, there's no question, first place, that it's a huge amount of suffering with conventional crime, what we in the United States call street crime, includes murder and auto theft and burglary, and no one should imagine that I am diminishing or dismissing the suffering. As far as traditional organized crime, it's mostly associated with drug trafficking, prostitution, gambling operations, and the like, and that certainly has significant cost. But yes, I hold, as do some other criminologists, that at the end of the day, the overall cost, certainly by any measure, economic cost, from white-collar and economic crime generally, and most particularly what I call finance crime, the crime emanating from Wall Street, is greater by any measure, multiply greater in cost, any way you measure it, than that from conventional crime. I gave just one small example, that in recent years, conventional bank robbery by ordinary bank robbers, some are addicts, some are unemployed people, some are just hapless individuals, a few are professional thieves, but the total take ranged in recent years in the United States between 25 million and 60 million. There's a wide consensus that the crimes of the banking institutions were not in the range of 25 to 60 million in losses, but in the hundreds of billions. And as I said, some commentators suggest upwards of $1 trillion. And one other thing that should be said in all of this, that it's often thought, economic crime, white-collar crime is often thought of as crime that simply has financial or economic consequences. But in fact, it has very substantial physical consequences. When it's corporations, unsafe environmental practices, unsafe work conditions, unsafe products, kill people and injure and make huge numbers of people ill. Even the bank crimes, the crimes of Wall Street, we have recently significant upsurge in suicides by middle-aged people in the United States. And the inference is some part of this is related to the desperation linked to losing jobs, losing savings. People die prematurely from heart attacks, distress of financial stress. Financial stress can intensify domestic violence and the like. So it isn't simply a cost in terms of economic and financial losses. There are also serious physical dimensions as well.
What kind of crimes are we talking about? You mentioned, among other things, insider trading, but also excessive risk and leveraging. It's a crime. Some would call risk and leveraging just a necessary part of free market capitalism. Is it a crime? Why?
What specific crimes am I really? Well, first place, you mentioned insider trading. And of course, insider trading, simply by definition, the insider trade has profit, then the people on the other side of the trade lose. I mean, that's the whole. So there are always losing parties as well as winning parties. But actually, the cost of insider trading socially far less than manipulation of the mortgage market, manipulation by the banks, hidden fees by the banks, and other activities. And the reason is that the insider trading impacts on people who have enough money to invest in the stock market. Now granted, some of them are ordinary middle-class people who are investing for their retirement, and they lose some from the insider trading. But the manipulations, the fraudulent mortgage-related activities, that leads to people losing everything, losing their jobs, their homes, their savings. And so there's the paradox that came up in the session that the prosecutors have gone after insider traders on the one hand, but not after the mortgage providers on the other hand, although the latter are far more socially harmful than the former.
Is it fair to say that Wall Street didn't learn anything from the financial meltdown in 2008, or did the meltdown just simply encourage it because they made such money out of it?
No, it's almost mystifying and enormously disturbing, the evidence of how little they seem to have learned. Wall Street continues, since 2008, to be laser-like focused on pressuring U.S. political entities not to try and inhibit their ability to earn the quickest and the largest profits possible. And they partly do this by claiming that if you put restrictions and regulations on us, the financial sector will shift from the United States to Europe to elsewhere. People unemployed in the financial sector in the U.S. will lose jobs, and people in other countries will gain. This is used to scare our political leadership from trying to impose regulations. But it's a scam, in my view, that the cost in terms of job savings and everything else as a result of their ongoing activities in the banking sector far outweigh any contributions that that sector makes to society as a whole. So the evidence so far is that they have learned very little, and they have suffered very little consequence from the actions that they took in the lead-up to the crisis.
Why isn't anyone preventing this? What about the SEC or the DA? I mean, are they inept or perhaps in on the game?
Well, let's take the case. SEC, of course, is the Security and Exchange Commission that oversees the Wall Street, the securities industry, and the like. There are several problems. One is they are not very well funded relative to their responsibilities. They are overseeing trillions of dollars of financial activity, and the funding is very limited relative to that. Secondly, unfortunately, they have often been quite inept. One argument is that the Wall Street firms and law firms and banks offer far higher pay. They get the best and the brightest. And the government regulatory agencies offer much less. Now, I want to be fair here, that these are some bright, intelligent people, but another problem I alluded to or elaborated on in the lecture is the conflict of interest, that in the American system, many in the SEC spend 3 years, 5 years at a government salary there, and then go to a Wall Street entity earning 10 times as much. In the last couple of months, a new head of the SEC, Mary Jo White, has been appointed. She made her reputation as a federal prosecutor quite aggressive. But what has she been doing in the last few years? She's been earning millions of dollars defending the very banks she is now supposed to oversee as the head of the SEC. Whether she will do this aggressively or not remains to be seen. But that's one part of the problem. So there are a number of issues. Funding, the incompetence in some cases. A famous example of that is that they didn't catch Bernard Madoff in his massive Ponzi scheme, even though the SEC was specifically informed by a financial analyst many years ago. This has to be a fraud. They didn't successfully follow up on that. And so, yes, there are questions about competence, too.
So the solution must lie with the politicians, but as you say, they are highly connected with Wall Street.
And that's a big part of the problem, that this famous sociologist, C. Wright Mills, talked about the power elite, the interlocks between the top government people, the top people in the business sector. And that's a huge, huge problem. Yes, they have all kinds of ties, not only what I alluded to in the lecture, the huge dependence of the political leadership on money from Wall Street, but also moving in and out, moving back and forth between high-level government positions, high-level Wall Street positions. Robert Rubin, Secretary of Treasury under Clinton, then goes to Citigroup, earns over $100 million in a bank that had a horrendous record in the lead-up to the financial crisis. And he then said, I have no managerial responsibility. He was never charged with anything. But that's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that if nothing will be done, there might be another financial catastrophe looming. How do we prevent it?
You only prevent it at the end of the day when you have unfortunately, at the end of the day, you need a critical mass of civil societies mobilized demand of fundamental change. And in my understanding, for various reasons, there has been more of that here in Iceland than in the United States. And I mentioned we have American civil society. Citizens are distracted by many other issues, immigration, gun control, and domestic terrorism and the like. And it was mentioned, memories are short. I unfortunately don't think we currently have the momentum, the political will, to do what has to be done, redesign the architecture of our financial sector. And I unfortunately believe if that isn't done, there will be a very significant financial, possibly political crisis in our future. I don't believe the present situation is sustainable.
And with social unrest in consequence?
Well, at a certain point, again, you've seen this in Greece, you've seen this in Spain, you have the austerity riots, and you had enough desperate people across North Africa and the Arab countries in a way that was largely unanticipated. If you and I were sitting here in June of 2010, I don't think we would be talking about an outbreak of uprisings that happened in spring 2011. No one really foresaw that coming, but what happened is a number of not totally predictable things come together, and people are very interconnected today. Facebook played a role in this, and almost overnight you have huge mobilization. It could happen if there are enough desperate, debt-burdened U.S. students who cannot find jobs at some point, unless we effectively address the structural issues.
One final question. You visited the Special Prosecutor's Office this morning.
Right.
How do you rate this work, and do you think that it is something that could be used as a model for other countries?
You mean is the special prosecutor, you mean here doing...
Yeah.
Again, as I believe that the steps addressed in Iceland on the basis of my experience are closer to what all the countries affected. Iceland has come closer to adopting the approach proportional to the size of its population and resources than any of the other countries. And it is remarkable that by all measures the recovery seems better than in many of the countries that failed to appoint special prosecutors, go after the bankers, refuse to bail out the institutions, impose the cost on the bondholders, not on ordinary citizens and taxpayers. So I'm fascinated by what's happening here, what Mr. Haukson and his office are doing. I don't have any illusions. They also face huge challenges, a very difficult job, and I don't have any illusions about the challenges they face, but I think they are a possible model, hopefully a model that American prosecutors could be inspired by as well.